Welcome to Backstage Pass with Gail Davis, your invitation into the world of keynote speaking and event planning expertise. Join us as we pull back the curtain and dive into exclusive interviews with speaking industry experts. From seasoned speakers to master event planners, we're here to provide you with the ultimate backstage experience. Get ready to unlock valuable insights, tips, and strategies that will elevate your events and leave your audience inspired. Welcome to Backstage Pass. My name is Gail Davis, and I am your host. I am particularly excited about today's episode. Up until now, we have had speakers as guests on the podcast, and today we actually have a client. The reason we decided to move forward in this direction is that one of our goals of this podcast is to unlock what event planners are worrying about and what problems they're trying to solve. And we want to be able to come alongside them as a partner to support and provide expertise. So I thought it would be fitting to have one of the top event strategists that we work with to be our guest today, because after all, who spends more time backstage than the person that is responsible for orchestrating the event? So today we have Heather Davis. And Heather, we're not related, by the way, we just have the same last name, but Heather is a corporate vice president with New York Life, and she has over 25 years experience. She has led strategic marketing and meeting planning initiatives, reporting directly to the CEO as part of the Nautilus leadership team. Her portfolio of experience includes oversight of 3 key domains: marketing, meetings, training, and development. And she drives innovative strategies and high impact outcomes. Welcome, Heather. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you, Gail. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, to ground our audience, I mentioned that you're a corporate vice president with New York Life and that you report to the CEO of the Nautilus Group. Can you explain and ground people on what the Nautilus Group is in relationship to New York Life?
Sure, absolutely. So the Nautilus Group is an exclusive membership-based resource. We have an elite group of about 230 experienced insurance and financial professionals that are also agents at New York Life. So our Nautilus members themselves, they work with affluent, high net worth business owner clients, sometimes professional athletes, professional entertainers, farmers, people that have wealth. And our team at Nautilus, we provide a range of consultative services. So in addition to things like the marketing, the meetings that we're going to be talking about today, we do practice management, which is teaching them how to work in their business. But we also have a team of individuals that actually create technical design, case support for these members who are working with these clients.
Okay. Now, I know that the meeting that we support you on is an annual meeting. Is that the only time this group gets together, once a year?
That's the only time in person that this group gets together under the umbrella of the Nautilus Group. So the company, New York Life, has other meetings along the way. Those are usually reward meetings, whereas this is truly an educational event. So this is our one and only in-person meeting on an annual basis.
And what is the name of this meeting?
The meeting itself is called the Nautilus Annual Meeting. So very apropos, because that's what it is. So we've been hosting the meeting for well over 20 years. And it's a great experience for our members to come together. Normally it's in Plano, Texas, and that happens. One time we did go to Vancouver a couple of years ago, but for the most part it is right here in Texas.
What would you say is the overall objective of bringing these people together for this annual meeting?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, we have a membership organization. So in addition to paying monthly dues to belong, our members actually pay their own way to come to this meeting. They pay for their hotel, their airfare, everything except the cost of the meeting itself and the meals at the meeting. So many of our members, they think that this meeting alone is actually worth the cost of membership for the entire year. Just coming to this meeting is such a huge opportunity for them. It's an educational event. So as I mentioned, it's not a rewards trip. So they are choosing to take time out of their office to be there. The meeting itself, it delivers a variety of content. So we have technical presentations, we have sales strategies, we have marketing, practice management, communication, motivation, and the members get to network. They network with one another. So they not only learn from our speakers, but from each other as well. And one other thing that's really unique about this meeting, they're able to bring their teams with them. They can bring their staff if they choose. So it's a huge benefit for those individuals as well. They get to network with their other colleagues that are in similar roles to them. So I suppose at the bottom line is that the objective is to provide a great program that's in very high value to them and to their team members. They'll help us recruit a future class of great members and then to grow personally and professionally from the experience.
That's a tall order. I love it. And to make the event better every year. I know when you have an
Right.
annual meeting, people will be like, oh, Heather, how are you going to outdo this year?
Oh
And
my goodness, yes.
You keep raising the bar. How
That's
many people help you on your event team?
Yeah, so my team is very small. It's me plus 3. So,
Okay,
and I do want to mention this is just one part of our job. So,
sure.
although it does take a whole year to plan this event, it is just one of the things that we are doing. So, having such a small team means that everyone at Nautilus, all of our staff, participate in facilitating this meeting, from our admins to our legal team. This is an all hands on deck event. So you might have one of our top case development officers at the door, manning the door to make sure, the door is closed and people can hear properly. So, but again, it's a very small team, just me plus 3.
Got it. I think I know the answer to this because I've been privy to it, but I'd like you to talk about how you measure success of this meeting.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do survey all of our members. So as soon as the meeting is over, when they're on their way back to the airport, we send out a survey and ask them for their very candid feedback. And they are very outspoken group. So they do share candidly with us because they know that feedback helps us to improve our future meeting. We also get feedback from our Nautilus board, from our internal staff, from our home office attendees, and the fact that they keep coming back is a really good measure that we're doing something right.
I find it interesting that you said when they're on their way to the airport, you send the survey out. Have you found that timing is really critical versus waiting 3 days or waiting a week?
I think absolutely. We've waited in the past, but I think when they're on the bus, if they're taking the bus back to the airport, or when they're waiting to catch the plane, they're still all fired up about the meeting and everything's fresh in their mind. By the time the weekend passes and they're catching up the next week, we don't get as many responses. So those out of the gate responses that we get are super critical to getting candid feedback.
I know it's been helpful to us over the years because it's really allowed us to fine tune our recommendations, to know what lands with your group and what doesn't land.
Yeah, we get a lot from the survey.
Yeah, you get good feedback. Are there any other events that your team plans throughout the year?
Yeah, so I've been with New York Life, as you mentioned, for about 25 years, and I've been planning events for about 20 of those years. So my team does a variety of events. We do some big nationwide educational events for our Nautilus members and New York Life agents. We host another nationwide event that allows our agents to invite attorneys and accountants into their offices to watch the program and receive continuing education credit. We host some on-site events where our members actually go to other members' offices to engage in that peer-to-peer learning. We have a technical conference that we host. So almost every month we have 1 or 2 meetings going on.
Wow. You're juggling a lot there with a small team. I love it.
Yes.
How many speakers would you say you typically book per year?
I would say, depending on the year, 10 to 20 speakers.
That's a lot of speakers.
It is.
So I'm going to say, if you've been planning meetings over 20 years, let's go on the low end. You've probably booked around, conservatively, 200 speakers in your career.
I would say I've probably facilitated about 300 contracts. Some of those are repeat speakers that we contract with every year or nearly every year. So I would guess maybe 150 unique speakers and probably 300 contracts.
Okay, here's a key question that I just thought of. What makes a speaker a repeat speaker? Because oftentimes people think, oh, well, we've had them, we can't have them again. So
Right.
What is it that would cause you to repeat a speaker?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I know we have booked a couple of speakers through GDA more than once. From my standpoint, a lot of the speakers that I'm booking for the non-annual meeting event are technical speakers. And so our audience develops a rapport with some of these speakers, and maybe they have something that's very unique, and they have a specialization that no one else has that specialty. Sometimes it's an industry that doesn't have a lot of professional speakers, like for example, CPAs. We have a challenging time sometimes finding CPAs that like to stand on stage and conduct engaging programs for our audience. So that tends to be one of the reasons that we bring somebody back. But we also have some people, I'm thinking of like a Cam Marston, who speaks on on working with generations. That is a niche. It's so applicable to our agents, and he's easy to work with and fun to have with us.
Right.
And so that would be somebody that I might consider bringing back every 3 or 4 years.
What other factors, Heather, go into play with speaker selection?
From the company standpoint, I would say it would be the topic. Obviously, the speaker fee is important. We usually have an overall budget that we're managing for the meeting. So if I have one speaker that takes up 90% of that budget, I can't do much with the rest. So I try to find a range of speakers that obviously meet the overall budget. The speaker's availability. You and I plan meetings very early, but really waiting until the last minute, and last minute's like anything less than 6 months before the meeting, in my opinion, you're probably going to end up costing yourself more because fees go up, and the availability of the speakers, the good speakers get booked. So the speaker availability is definitely something that comes into play. How well we think the speaker is going to be received. We always ask for suggestions from the speakers. Our attendees do go to a lot of industry conferences, so they have a lot of feedback as to who they'd like to see. So that goes into the decision. From my standpoint, I'd like to add how easy I think that the speaker is going to be to work with, and the likability factor. I want to work with people that understand our deadlines and our audience, that they're going to work well with our team, treat my team with respect. Everybody's working really hard. Doesn't matter what your job title is. We are doing our best to deliver a great experience. So for us, we have a million things going on during the event. Our audience is our top client. So if I have a speaker that I think is going to require a really high degree of support, maybe they're not super flexible, we may not be a good fit for that person.
Yes, I totally understand that. I'm glad you mentioned availability. You get it, but I think it's been a hard transition coming out of the virtual world. You know, people are not used to everybody being available because they could record 2 virtuals in one day. I know someone who did 3 in one day. They didn't have to have days marked off for travel. And to your point, you've got to get these speakers booked in advance because there's so much more limited availability now that everybody is expecting in person.
Great.
On your survey that you send that they can do on the bus or on the way to the airport, is that where you ask them for speaker suggestions for future meetings?
It is. We have a question in there that asks if they have any speakers that they'd like to see.
Genius.
I feel that being around as long as I have and having such a small membership that we support, that my team is very approachable. So I very regularly get contacted by our agents or other people at New York Life that have heard a good speaker. So I have about a 25-page document that I keep with everybody that's been recommended, who recommended them, what the topic's about, and any additional information that I have on them, which has been very beneficial. I get contacted by other New York Life departments on the regular asking if they can have access to that list. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So you talked about their availability, their content, being easy to work with. You didn't mention speaker videos. How much does, because I get asked this by speakers all the time, how much does that speaker video play into your decision to hire a speaker?
Yeah. Candidly, I obsess over the videos. I almost always start with the speaker sizzle reel, which is usually like 3 to 7 minutes long. If I like that, I usually watch all the other videos that you provide, often more than once. And if I'm on the fence, I Google them and I find them online, often YouTube. A lot of them have done TED Talks. I also share those videos, like the ones that I think would be the most relevant, with my boss. So once I come up with a list of speakers that I'd like to move forward with, I share those with him as well, and he watches those too. So I think it's very, very important. It doesn't even have to be the highest quality production. I want to hear the message. I want to kind of see their presence on stage. And I want to see if it's a topic that will resonate.
Heather, I know that having worked with you over the years, that you have a lot of compliance and regulatory issues. And one of the steps in our process is we need to get you the speaker's slides in advance. And sometimes this causes concern from the speakers because they pride themselves that they want the latest and the greatest, and they're working until the last minute. I'd love for you to explain why this is important and why it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And you're right. It does throw a lot of speakers off because they like to come in at the last minute. They are used to having their decks on their device and being able to make changes, maybe even the night before or the morning of. But I work for a very highly regulated financial services organization. We are required to ensure that our speakers aren't saying anything that contradicts with what our agents are allowed to do. For example, let's say we hire somebody to talk about marketing and they discuss a platform or a marketing tool that isn't available for our agents to use. We want to address that in advance. We don't want them on the stage spending 10 minutes talking about TikTok videos, for example, and our agents aren't allowed to create TikTok videos. It's frustrating for our agents to hear about this amazing tool that they can't use. It's also just like we can head that off by knowing in advance what they're going to say. Also, we want to be very mindful that we don't disparage our competitors. That is not something that New York Life wants to do. We don't want to speak down to our competitors. We also want to make sure that our speakers are not sharing anything that's politically polarizing, and that what the speaker is representing on stage is in line with our company's rules and beliefs and culture.
And to me, this seems to go without saying, but I've run into it not only with you, but with some other organizations. The use of inappropriate language or
Right.
four-letter words. I mean,
Yep.
where are these speakers' mothers when they're growing
Right.
up? I mean, I like a good darn with the best of them, but when
Yes.
you're on stage being paid to deliver a message, I know that that's a big turnoff for your organization. And
it is. And before we book, we actually create a document that's called Before We Book, and it goes through all of the nuances. For example, the compliance. I always kind of say, if you wouldn't hear it on the Disney Channel, please don't share it with our audience. It's not that we don't have an adult audience. It's just that there's a time and a place for four-letter words. And I don't think that on stage is the place to be dropping, especially some of the harder four-letter words. Maybe, you could do whatever you want at the bar after, but not on stage. And I know some people like that shock value, but for me, it's a panic moment.
Yeah,
So
yes.
when we have that conversation in advance and I say, please don't say anything, and then they stand up and they do it anyway, I die a million deaths at that moment.
Yeah,
So
I know.
even if my audience is okay, you're killing me. So please don't. That would be just lovely if we could just avoid that.
And you're killing me too when I'm sitting there. We covered this. I love it. What are some of the other challenges that you face as an event strategist?
Yeah, I think you mentioned this at the beginning. One of the biggest challenges for me is trying to raise the bar year after year. Every year we give our heart and soul to these programs to make them excellent, and they are excellent. We obviously the members keep coming back. It's a very well received meeting, but that means the day that event ends, when they're back on the bus going to the airport, we're already working on the next event and thinking about what we can do better, and that can be really, really intense. The other challenge is that our audience is diverse. We have people in the room who are running small businesses, some really successfully, some that are still in the growth phase, and others who are in the business answering the telephone or scheduling appointments. They're the staff that are working with those agents. So trying to find topics and speakers that appeals to everyone in the room is a challenge. We know that we can't be all things to all people. So we try to design programs that have something for everyone, not everything for everyone. That is an impossible benchmark.
Yeah. One of the big buzzwords or buzz topics now is AI, artificial intelligence. Do you see AI affecting your role, or do you see it affecting the role of your attendees?
Yeah, so I would say right now that my team uses AI to help us with creating promotional messages, summarizing key points, summarizing surveys. We take all of those surveys, and AI is amazing to help us kind of summarize by category and give us a really good insight without necessarily having to meticulously read through, 200 surveys. We don't currently record our speakers, but I would love to be able to do that and then use AI to summarize their messages to provide our attendees with some solid takeaways. I've seen some really interesting tools for the future where we have things like uh, somebody delivering the message that isn't actually well, it's a person, but it's an actor, and their audio is actually a voiceover. So I am fascinated to think about where AI could go in the future. But right now we have probably a limited use. How are you seeing AI impact the meetings that you're working with?
Mainly, I feel like everybody's been asked to bring in an AI speaker. So, it's almost like they go, oh, we just went to the meeting with our C-suite and we want someone AI.
Right.
And what I'm learning is what part of AI?
Yes.
Generative AI, you know, how AI is going to change the economic future of your industry. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many different things. One of the speakers we work with has a new take on AI where it's called Made with Love. And he talks about growing up on a farm and how things always tasted better at grandma's house. But where he's coming back to is there's certain things that AI can do, but
Mhm.
AI can't make it with love, which is kind of a cool message for all of us in the service industry,
Right.
because like your agents, a lot of the stuff, the quotes can be pulled by AI,
Yep.
but can you ever replace the fact that I know Bob and I call Bob and Bob knows me and Bob knows my objectives and Bob's, our relationship is baked in love or made in love. So I think it's something everybody's super interested in.
Yep.
I think people want to be efficient.
Yes.
They want to be ahead of the curve, but I'm not worried that, there's a future where AI robots are delivering all the speeches. I think we're still going to want that human interaction and customization. At least I
I
hope.
agree. We have a speaker that we hired for our 2025 meeting, Ann Handley, and she is
Yes.
the author of a book called Everyone Writes, and I read her blog that comes out every other week. You should
Yes.
definitely sign up for that. If you don't, it's very entertaining and informative. But I know she talks a lot in her blog about, or her email about AI and where it has a place and where it does not. And I think exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
that human element just isn't going to be replaced, but it sure can be helpful. I use it
Yeah.
a lot when I'm like, please help me rewrite this message. So on a personal level, I use it a lot, but I have to tell it what I want. I mean, it's
Right.
good is what you put into it. So, so we heard a speaker, to our internal team that was saying, it's a professional that knows how to use the tool that's going to be really great.
Yes.
So you've got, like, the accountant with the piece of paper versus the accountant with the calculator versus the accountant with a computer, or the accountant that has all of those tools plus AI. It's going to
Right.
be that person that knows how to use all of the tools that's really going to be of value in the future. So I think it'll be
That's
interesting to
very,
see where it takes us.
yeah. I'm looking forward to Anne. I think she's going to be a great
Oh
speaker
yes,
for your
me
event.
too.
So speaking of that, GDA Speakers has been really fortunate to book, I think, 37 speakers for Nautilus, and we started in 2014.
Mhm.
I mean, you could Google speakers, you could go direct. What is it about the relationship and the partnership of working with a bureau? And I know you have a couple of instances where, due to a long-term relationship, you work with other bureaus as well. What is it about working with a bureau that makes your job easier, or that you continue to go that route?
Yeah, well, trust me, I am still Googling them. So when I am oftentimes, in fact, when I start my meeting with your team, I usually come with a list in hand and I
That's
say,
true.
these are the people that I've heard about. These are some people that are on my list. Can you please start with adding them to the list? So I'm just going to focus on working with you because this is a GDA podcast. But what's great
Yeah.
about you and your team is that your team does all the heavy lifting for me. So I might know their name, but I don't know who represents them. I would spend a day trying to figure out who their bureau was and who the contact was. So your team can find them. They can add them to this really cool portal that you have. You can they put their fees right in there, so we know right out of the gate whether there's somebody we could even consider. The other thing is that your team opines and gives me your thoughts and your feedback. So if I can't quite decide, oftentimes I get the feedback from your team and they will actually do some research and make some calls and see how they resonate. And if the speaker happens to be in town, you have always been very kind to invite me so I can see the speaker in person, which has been super helpful. So for me, not having, especially with such a small team, not having to do all that really is super helpful. The other thing that I have to say is that my company has a speakers agreement, and having to go back with every single speaker and negotiate all the language is the biggest time drain on not only me, but the speaker and our legal team. And so the efficiency of being able to use our corporate contract and being able to just, change out what the deliverables are, but the language is agreed on with very, very minor modifications. That is unbelievably efficient. So,
Yes.
a couple other things. I just got to keep thinking of things. Yes. So the other thing is, we have a lot of nuances. So for example, compliance, as you mentioned, so your team understands the process. You understand what I'm up against. You can be an ambassador for us when you're liaisoning with the speakers and explaining to them why we need their presentations 5 weeks in advance. And candidly, at the end of the day, I know that you, Gail, and your team have a vested interest in making sure that I get good speakers, because when we have a great experience, you know that you're going to get our business in the future. So I feel like we have bonded together in that way.
Oh, I love it. It is so true. I say it all the time. You just want to get a client and keep a client. It's really that easy.
Yes.
But there is so much room for things to go wrong on all the things that you mentioned. So I'm glad we have built that trust over the years, and it does take time. And that's not to say that, we don't have speed bumps, but we're able to pick up the phone and call and go, we are having a speed bump here. Let's work this out.
Right. Your team has always cared a lot, and that is evident. So even if it doesn't go right, I know that you care to look into it and you care to make it right. So that is, to me, that speaks volumes.
And something that's great here that we don't have this benefit with clients all over the nation, but the fact that your event's local, we can really be there and provide on-site support. So that's great.
Been great as well. Yes.
When you look, well, no, let's stick with right now. Is there any particular topic or speaker slot that you're like, oh, this one's hard to find? I'm looking for someone that speaks on something, and it just seems to be challenging. Is there something like that out there?
Yeah, I think there are actually. Well, the technical stuff. Do you have a CPA that has some good speaker training? Honestly, they would probably make a fortune on the circuit. But technical speakers are hard. Another area that I think would be super beneficial is the technical sales skills. So, for example, a lot of our speakers have some kind of generalized takeaways, a motivational message or communications, but somebody that is teaching sales skills to a group of individuals who is very well accomplished. So this could be things like how to get referrals, how to draft an elevator speech, things that are true skill building. I think that would be, I think there have been people that have done that really well in the past, but I think that's a space that could be filled in the future with a dynamic speaker.
This is going to be one of the most well listened to sections. People are going to be like, oh, I want to be that. Looking back on all these speakers that you've hired and all the events that you've done, is there an unexpected surprise with a speaker that you would like to share?
Yeah. So, 25 years is a lot of time to try to remember everything. So let me just go with my recent experience, because this happened this year. And I will say you asked about an unexpected surprise. So we had a speaker that our members had been asking about for years. I mean, years. And it just never worked out for one reason or another. Either the speaker wasn't available or the budget didn't work out. So I kind of like just forgot a little bit, like to revisit this person. And so this year, through a whole series of miracles, I think we were able to get him booked. And he came to our meeting and he spoke. And then what was so surprising was that afterwards, he went to the bar and he talked with our audience and he shared stories and he was so engaging. And by the end of the night, we were kind of all giggling because he had formed his own little fan club. Like everywhere he went, like these people were like our audience was like following him around, and he made them just feel so special. And somebody that was so coveted to share his personal time with them as well. And I have to say, maybe this is my own surprise, but this was the former FBI hostage negotiator, Chris Voss, that I'm talking about. And I would say that somebody that was, this FBI like tough guy, I would not have guessed that he would be so approachable. But for him to be just so generous with his time and make our audience just feel so, I don't know, special, that was just a huge, very memorable, unexpected surprise.
I'm so glad you shared that story. I do think there's so much value into who the person is on the stage and off the stage. So yes. I love that one. That will be a well listened to and retold story, I'm sure.
Now Chris is going to have to go to all the happy hours, but all said. Just very
That's
nice.
awesome. Okay, let's look a little bit into the future. What changes to meetings, maybe specifically your meeting, do you see in the future? And are there any event trends that you're seeing as we all start looking at 2025?
Yeah, well, I would say, and you were with me through all of this, but I would say what has changed in the past couple of years was the pandemic. I think the pandemic was the biggest change to meetings. We had to quickly pivot from this solely in-person event to this virtual experience for a couple of years. But now that we're back in person, I feel like future meetings have to be an even greater experience than they ever were before. So we have to have great content delivered in a memorable way that's better than and more engaging than you could get from the comfort of your own home. So that means we have to add this whole deeper level of experience and connection. And, I'm excited to work with you and learn from you as to how we can continue to do that. But I do think that that's going to be a trend for the future. We're going to have to rise above and beyond what we could get from a virtual experience.
I like that. That's well said. I have another client that is a really large corporate client, and they have a meeting with about 2,000, 2,500 people. And I noticed they're putting a little bit of emphasis on things like sustainability. So giving everybody a water bottle, and then you just, wellness is kind of factored into their thing. There's the morning run, there's the morning yoga class. For nursing mothers, there's a private room to go into, meditation time. So maybe it feels like meetings, like you made a really good comment. You said, is the value there greater than something you could get from the comfort of your own home? So I think there is this awareness of people are traveling and you've still got to look out for their wellness. So I think that's a really positive change for attendees. I like that.
Good. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Some of the speakers that we've been asked for, mental health was not something that had been requested over the many years prior. And now I see that frequently. People want to know how to balance work and life and how to deal with some of the challenges that you mentioned.
And I think I worked at EDS for 20 years. I think back then it was scary to even have that conversation because you wanted people all in. And so leaders have really taken a big step to say, we've got to look out for the whole employee. So I think that's positive. Okay. As we're wrapping up, any top favorite speakers you might want to mention to your other event planners that are listening today?
Well, sure. Again, kind of focusing on the last event, because I do think it was just such a great lineup that we have. But to me, and I think this was a new speaker for you to work with, which was Jay Bear. But he was just awesome. Like a very simple message that would resonate with you. his presence on stage. He was funny. He was awesome. So I love Jay Bear. Same thing I would say with John Acuff. I thought he was just awesome to work with. Really well received. He was one of our closing speakers.
Yep.
In the realm of the mental health and the wellness, Don DePani was so different, and he was so special. He opened our meeting and he was just very, very memorable, something different than we'd ever done before. And then of course, Chris Voss, because the star power and just that our audience connected with him so well. Another speaker that we had the year before, this is when we were in Vancouver. And I know right after I heard him speak, Gail, I reached out to you and I was like, wow, was Ryan Leake. I thought Ryan was amazing. He had so much energy and he was just so fun. I like that edutainment where speakers like delivering a message, but it's also somebody that's really fun to listen to. And I thought Ryan was great. Rick Rigsby was somebody that we had a few years ago. We had him close out our meeting. Our audience still, our members still talk about him. He's probably more people have reached out to me over the years asking about Rick. He was just great. So much energy, great way to end the meeting. And then the last one I'm just going to throw out there is somebody I know that's near and dear to your heart, and that is Nando Parado. We had Nando speak years ago. He may have actually been the first booking that we had with you, Gail.
I think so.
Yeah. And I just personally will never forget one of his messages. Maybe it hit home because at the time I had 2 young kids and I just had so many demands on my life that I was having to prioritize like so many people. But what he said, I'm sure, was much more eloquent than what I'm about to say. But the message that I took away was this, is that when you have 2 commitments at the same time and you can only choose one, he said, think about that decision 5 years into the future and look back at this moment and think about which one you'll most regret not showing up to. And that's your answer. And I have thought about those words so many times over the years as I've made tough choices about competing demands, and Nando's words have spoken to me for each of those decisions. And many of my team members have said the same thing. So I think that's very powerful. So I have to put him at the top of that list.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. And you're going to get to see him in about 5 weeks. He's going to be here to celebrate the GDA 25th anniversary. And we're so glad that you're going to be there as well. And I just thank you so much for your insights. Having been a former event planner, managing an event team, I know the hard work. I know the pressure that's on you. I know that you've got this audience, but you've also got these decision makers, and hats off to you. You do an amazing job.
Thank you. We couldn't do it without you. So I appreciate your support and your team support. You are as professional as it gets, and we very much value our partnership.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you for joining us on Backstage Pass with Gail Davis. Tune in for more exclusive interviews and pro tips to elevate your events. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We'll catch you next time behind the curtain on Backstage Pass.